Hey boys and girls, it's me, your host, Mr. Cemetery, welcoming you back to another one of my spine-tingling terror tales. So tighten your belts so you won't be scared out of your pants. Because tonight's story is about a student who moves to a new town and starts attending a new school, but has trouble finding the right classroom. Think you're brave enough to listen? Well, let's find out. I call this one the first day of school. Enjoy!
The first day of school is always nerve-wracking for any student. My first day at a new school was an absolute nightmare. And I was 14 years old and my family just moved to a new town. My dad had been offered a job with better pay, and a mere week later, we'd sold our house and rented an apartment in the town we moved to. It was during the summer we moved, so it was simple starting at my new school. And on the first day, I walked alone to school, and I was nervous about making new friends. When I arrived, I picked up my schedule and I saw my first class was mathematics. It was in 104. And I began walking down the hallways, searching for the room, but the school was like a maze. Eventually, the bell rang and the students made their way to their classrooms. In less than a minute, the hallways were deserted. And I stopped in front of a pair of old-looking wooden doors. And I pushed them with the scraping sound of metal and wood. They opened. I found myself in a hallway that was old and dusty. The lockers were all hanging open and a stench of mold and dampness hung in the air. I was about to turn around and go back the way I came when I noticed the numbers on the classroom doors. 100, 101, 102. And I began walking down the hallway, but when I peered through the windows of each classroom, they were empty. Then came the room 104. I peeked through the window, and all the students were sitting at their desk. The teacher was standing at the blackboard, and class was in session. I quietly opened the door and went inside. None of the other students paid any attention to me. I started to apologize awkwardly for being late, but the teacher just turned her back on me and began writing on the board. I hurried and found a seat at the front of the classroom and sat down. The teacher had already written her name in chalk on the blackboard. It was Miss Taylor. I was nervous and self-conscious, so I didn't want to draw attention to myself throughout the class. I just kept my head down and concentrated on solving the math problems. Eventually, after what seemed like hours, the bell rang and class ended. The other students scrambled out of their desk and ran out the door. I looked at my watch and was shocked to see that it was already 3 p.m. The school day was over and I only attended one class. I walked down the hallways, trying to find an exit, and all of a sudden I heard someone calling my name and looked around. There was a teacher making his way towards me, and he had a big frown on his face.
Yes, you. You're the new boy, aren't you?
And he said, yes, I replied.
Where have you been? I've been searching for you all day. Why didn't you go to your classes?
But I was in class.
Which class was this?
Mrs. Taylor's class, room 104. And the teacher's eyes grew wide and he flew into a rage.
I suppose you think you're pretty funny, don't you? Well, you're not. It's no laughing matter. Now get out of my sight.
I was very confused, and on the long walk home, I kept wondering what I said that got him so upset. As soon as I reached my house, and I turned on my laptop and went online, I started searching for the name of the school and the teacher, Miss Taylor. What I found scared me to my very soul. There were old news articles and a terrible massacre that happened in the school 10 years before. One morning, bright and early, a crazed gunman had simply walked into the school and started shooting. He stood at the doorway of a classroom and shot the teacher. Then he picked off students one by one until every single person in the classroom was lying in a pool of blood. There were pictures of the classrooms where the murders happened. I recognized it immediately, and it was room 104. There were also photos of the victims. I recognized them too. Trembling with fear, I gazed at the smiling faces of Miss Taylor and all the students I had been in class with. I felt sick to my stomach. My hands were shaking and a chill ran through me. I spent all night trying to convince myself that it wasn't true. The next morning, I was too terrified to go back to school. I broke down and told my parents what had happened. At first, they thought it was just nerves. But eventually, after I refused to go to school for a whole week, they gave in and enrolled me into a different school. I managed to get on with my life and tried my best to forget all about the incident. I almost succeeded. This morning, I received a letter in the mail. There was no stamp on the envelope and no return address. It had been hand-delivered. When I opened it and read the printed card inside, my hands started shaking again. It was an invitation to a class reunion, and it was signed from Mrs. Taylor.
Yikes. That was just creepy. Can you imagine going to school and finding out your classmates and teacher were ghosts? No, it's time for one of my funny bones. Why don't mummies take time off? They're afraid to unwind. That's all for this week, kiddos. Join me next week for an all-new terror tale. Can't wait until then. Well, join me over on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and all the socials. Just click the link in the show notes of this episode to find out everything Mr. Cemetery. Until next time, sleep well, friends. And remember to stay spooky.